get started with this. Okay, so welcome back to the last day of the online training series for Autodesk Forge. As you already know me, but for those of you that are gonna have a chance to look at this recording later on, my name is Jaime Rosales, and I'm a senior developer advocate for the Forge platform. And with me today, it's only me, so nobody else is gonna join us. I think we have an ongoing session also, but it's focused on .NET core. So, and I'm gonna be doing Node.js. So if for some reason you're kind of like not planning to continue with Node.js or anything like that, just raise a hand. I can send you guys the link for the .NET one, .NET Core one. But if not, we can move along. So what we are gonna, so this event itself, that it took place on 4 days with like 4 tutorials that are coming from our Learn Forge material, which had parallel tracks with Node.js and also .NET. Today we do have a parallel track, that being the case. So we are gonna do 4 sessions per day. We actually might be able to do 3 today because I see the attendees being very similar to some of the previous days. So I will go quite quickly on the setup thing, but if you guys don't have any questions in regards to that, I'm happy to just kind of like continue and move along. I know it's Friday, so you might want to like finish early today or something like that, if that's the case. I'm not gonna, so all good. So during this session, basically, I will code, I will answer questions, and then in between sessions, you will code and you will submit your questions for me to look into it. So what we have scheduled for today, it's gonna be the Modify Your Models tutorial, basically accessing the Design Automation API in order to automate certain tasks and processes directly into our desktop applications servers that are running on the cloud. So again, modify your models. And this is something that we're gonna be working on. Basically, it's a simple app that allows you to select an input file, define a new width and a new height for that file to actually interact with. We are going to be adding an activity. So an activity is something that we will be defining to be what kind of action do you want to perform on the data that you're actually sending to the cloud. So in this case, if you notice, we're sending a set of parameters together with an input file. And then in the server, we will get the activity that it's defined in there to actually run this process and do what we specify wanted to do when the server itself receives this data. So for session 1, we will get started with the intro and setup. We'll see how it goes. There is a setup in this part of it that might take a bit of time, so we actually might do the 4 sessions, but if not, and if everybody has most of the stuff on the setup itself ready, we can kind of like move along as well. So to get started with the intro and setup, I would like to talk a bit more about what the Design Automation API allows us to do. Basically, it's to access this kind of like automation capabilities that Autodesk core products offer you as a cloud service. So let's think about any task that you can automate on your desktop application can now be automated at a scale using Design Automation API. So think about it like you can actually get this work done quicker in a more reliable way once you're automating this kind of task that can be like very time consuming and so on. So in what's more, because of Design Automation API, it's a web service, so you can connect these tools with your business systems to provide these complete workflows that can accelerate the work processes, improving business flexibility, and generating like new business opportunities for you. So, and one example for this would be, think about it for AutoCAD. This is something that I probably have said in the past too. Let's think about that we want to automate the process with AutoCAD. In AutoCAD, there is a command that allows you to basically plot a PDF, right? So you have a DWG, you want to plot it to a PDF, and you get back as a result, basically a PDF, which is what the expected behavior of this command is. But now let's think about it that for that, you will need an AutoCAD desktop product. So that includes also a license, right? You will need to open up AutoCAD, load your DWG model, and then hit the command plot to PDF in order to obtain back the PDF that you requested. So now let's think about it in a project where we have, we'll say 500, 1,000, 2,000 DWGs, and we want to convert every single one of them into a PDF. We either run this command 500, 1,000, 2,000 times, or we can automate this process directly in AutoCAD with the AutoCAD API. So we can create a plugin that basically will allow us to, let's say, drag and drop this folder that contains all these different DWGs. Once the plugin receives it, it knows that it needs to take certain action on it and start processing that automation to give us back a folder that contains 500, 1,000, 2,000 PDFs in it, okay? But if you think about it, for this, we still need the AutoCAD desktop license. We still need some kind of interaction in order to, I guess, just the definition of the drag and drop, which in design automation, we're still gonna need as well. But, and then at some point also, we're kind of limited to the power that our machine actually has, right? So if you have a really kind of like old machine and you have kind of like one of the latest AutoCAD versions and so on, it might actually take a little bit longer, even if it works, right? But with design automation, we do have the opportunity to kind of like avoid all those things. And then from a simple web page that we can create, or just some kind of automated batch processing mode that we want to launch, we can send, let's say, this folder that contains all the DWGs. We send it up to the server that is hosted on the cloud. And then depending on what kind of automation it's needed, it's gonna use the resources that actually needs. You're gonna be charged per the processing hour of the use of those servers. So let's say your automation to convert this 1,000 PDFs takes 45 seconds, takes 3 minutes. That's what you're gonna get charged on it, okay? And when it comes to the pricing, I think it's 6 cloud credits per processing hour on the Revit side, and I think 3ds Max as well. And I can confirm the pricing a bit. I think it just recently changed, so I need to just make sure that I'm giving you the right information. But then again, it's if you think about it in the long term itself, you don't have to do this crazy investment of having this big servers running this software itself in order to create this kind of automations, right? So, and it basically goes like this. The design automation API, it's a set of RESTful API calls. So they work on the server side. So it's not gonna be doing anything on the client side like we were doing, for example, yesterday with the viewer. The viewer itself, it is based on JavaScript. So we do need the client side to happen every time in there. Because of the RESTful calls itself, we have the availability of using the language that we feel more comfortable with at the time of coding. So let's say we want to keep everything on my .NET environment or my Node.js environment, Java, Python, and so on. the APIs itself can be used in that direction. Okay, and then where can this be? One of the benefits from this is that you can have, let's say, your own mobile app, your website, your web application, use design automation, and then basically send it over to one of the servers, depending on what kind of interaction you want to do. In the servers, we're going to need a couple of things to be happening there. So your code, that basically it will be kind of like a defined activity of what's going to happen in there, right? Depending on what kind of engine are we going to be using, we're going to have to define that code using the product API. So in this case, let's say we're using Revit API because we want to create a template model out of a set of points that we plotted somewhere in a web application or on a mobile application. And then the Revit server will receive this and it will know what to do based with the data that you sent and the set of instructions that you actually sent in order to process this and give us back an output of this newly created file that we requested for that. But all that needs to be defined previously to be sent to the server. The definition of this activity only needs to happen once. If you're gonna use it multiple times, you define it once, you make sure that it works, and then you can just start using that automation itself as many times as you want. So one way to do this, and also to have more like a visual picture of what's going on with this, we have our Forge app. So, and then we create a code for this Forge app. We have the source data, and then basically we will be sending that into the design automation API. So where it has the servers that are running AutoCAD, Revit, Inventor, 3ds Max, and I believe Civil 3D now also it's part of it. I think it's still in a public beta, so hopefully soon we'll get released into just another service that we support 100% on this. Something to keep in mind is that what we're sending here, and these are probably some words that you're going to be hearing and also reading a bit about it, are going to be like app bundles, right? So an app bundle, basically, think about it like a plugin that you're sending up to the cloud. First, you kind of like store it in some sort of storage location. And I will talk a little bit more about this in the next slide. But something to remember is that whenever we send it to the server, we do not have any UI access. So for example, if you're using Revit and then you come in and you prompt a pop-up message to say, enter this, the values of the height, width, and all that. In the server, there's no way to actually do that. So this is something that we need to, this kind of experience, we need to take care of it before actually we send it off to the design automation server. So that's the reason we take care of everything on the Forge application. So in some other stuff that we need to take into consideration too are errors. So sometimes there are certain errors that happen when some process on the API gets defined. So this is something that we need to prepare the application for to know how to deal with those kind of warnings, errors, and so on. So think about it as a batch operation that goes to a cloud server, basically, where you have an input of your source data, and then we're going to have an output of either a modified data, derivative outputs, reports, and so on. So it does have the capability of giving you back what you are looking for based on whatever actually fits your business itself. So basically, we need to make our data available in the cloud, and this could happen through different kind of storage services. It can be either the Forge object storage service, it can be BIM 360, It can be Azure, Google, Dropbox, Box, AWS, whatever you prefer. If you feel more comfortable with either of those, as long as you can store data itself and you can make it available, that's one way to do it, okay? We will be using pre-signed URLs later on in order to set up those permissions for design automation. So we will be sending links of this data in order to be sent over to the cloud. Then we do a download of those inputs via a web request. We run the code, then we upload that result via a web request. And then from there, we will get back the result of our operation that happened on that automation plugin itself. So something to keep in mind also is that whenever we send that definition, or as we call it, an activity, like I mentioned before, you do not need to do it every single time. You define it once, and then once you define it, you can use it as many times as you want from your account, right? And then simple input-output operations do not get stored in the server. Basically, they are just download and process, and then after that, they get discarded, okay? So the server itself will not keep a record of a file that you sent, for example. So if you need to interact with that same file again, you need to send it again, because the cloud server will not store your data. That's the reason we use the third-party storage. Can you still hear me? It's a little glitch there that I got stuck. Okay. You cannot hear me. No, I think I'm okay now. Okay. So what do we need for prerequisites of this sessions? So as we have done in the past couple of days, we need a Forge account. We need a Forge app again, with the definition of the design automation being enabled as one of the services that we want to use in our app. The question is, do I need an AutoCAD, Inventor, Revit, or 3ds Max in the machine? No, actually, for this session, you don't need it. We will actually provide you the plugins in order to interact with that. If you want to develop later with design automation, you definitely need those desktop environments, because you will need to use that in order to get the Revit API, AutoCAD API, develop your plugin, and at the same time also test it there before actually starting to move into design automation. But for this tutorial, no, we will give you the app bundle itself already zipped, and I will explain what that app bundle actually is doing. So for development setup, as we have used over the past couple of days, we're going to have Node.js on the runtime. If you do not have it yet, let me see, I think we do have everybody from previous, yeah. So just for the audience, if you have not attended any of the previous days tutorials, please just raise a hand or send a chat message saying that you have not. And if I don't see anything, I will assume all of you already have the development environment, the Node.js setup, and this is one new one that we're going to have to add for everybody, which is going to be nrock. Okay, I don't see anything, so good. That means everybody has their stuff ready. Perfect. So, and we're going to be using nrock, and the reason why it's because design automation needs a way to communicate us back when we have something ready. And since we're going to be developing this locally from our machine, we need some sort of service that allows us to create this endpoint to get notified when the process of design automation actually it's finished. So it's how it says here, a web request tunneling that we're going to be using as in nrock. Okay, So I'm gonna move into doing some setup demo and so on. So let me switch my screen. And if you have any questions, by all means, you can type them in the chat, in the Q&A section, and that way I have an easier way to keep a track on you as well. And since we're not that many today, we're about 9 people. You can raise a hand, and then we can discuss over microphone as well. Okay, so this is basically the tutorial that we're going to be taking care of today. Like I mentioned before, we're going to be using, it's not going to be quite visual like the other days, but if you would like to see your, I guess your input file that we're going to provide in the result file, feel free to use any of the previous days samples, where if you use the same credential keys, we're going to have a way to visualize those models directly in there as well, because they're going to be connecting and showing up in your buckets that are going to be stored in there. Okay. So we're going to start with the creation of the server. And then just again, I want to make sure that everybody has their Forge app client credentials, Visual Studio Code, and so on, because in that way I can move into the nrug setup as well. So for the nrug setup, we're gonna have the requirement of actually getting the tool that gets created. This, like I said, it will create a temporary address that we can use in order to receive that notification back that the process actually finished, and it was either successful or it failed during that kind of process. And do I have any Mac users on the call today? If you do, or am I the only one that it's a Mac user? Okay, yeah, all right. So when we use nrug with Mac, we will need to just keep in mind that we need to add a ./first before we run the nrug command that it's specified in here. Okay, so that's going to be the only difference for you. Then the rest of you that have Windows machines can basically just run the nrug command once you install nrug. Okay, so we're going to open the nrug setup, and then this is basically, it's a free tool that we can just obtain. We can do get started for free. Oh, do I need to log in with this thing? 1 second. I think we can just do download, and then we can have download from here. And we have different kind of options. I think I did download mine yesterday. Yeah, so this will download a zip file, okay? So once we have that zip file, we're gonna open that, expand it, and then this will give us this nrug terminology itself. Okay, this application that we can run. I do have it already, so I'm actually not gonna mess up with my environment. So I can go ahead and go into the use of the terminal. Actually, I was running this thing. So I think, oh, this is getting, I have a big screen now. So now it's just like, it gets kind of like in the way. And I do have some chat messages. Cannot install nrug 1. I'll get to you in a second. Give me 1 second. So, but did you download it already? If you have not downloaded and extract the zip file that it downloads, it's not gonna find it. So I have the nrug in my downloads, okay? You cannot download it. Ooh, okay, why not? Let me enable your mic. That might be easier. Daniel, you can unmute now. Hi. Daniel? I cannot hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can now.
Okay. So just tell me that it's not a secure site and it returns me 404 not found. So I cannot even access the website.
So, okay. Are you accessing through the link of this?
I did both. I tried the link and I tried to type it.
Okay. Why is it not giving you, not saying that it's a secure site? I see that it's using HTTPS and all that. All right, so I see that Alice says some systems will block the download and you have to click more info and have it run anyway on Windows. Okay, but if you do not have the, I can send you guys here the, we can try if I send you the zip file. Oh, but wait, you don't have, what kind of Windows do you have? Is it 32 or 64?
64-bit.
Okay. Let's see if this thing lets me send it there. I'm pretty sure I was able to send files before. No, okay. Now I can try and send it to you through email. But I don't know if your email itself will block that. Yeah, the thing is, like, we do need the nrux setup in order for us to be able to just run the thing locally.
Let's continue, and I will contact my IT guy after.
Okay.
So let's continue.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right. Okay. So once we have this nrux setup already extracted into our folder, it can be any kind of folder. It doesn't need to be in a specific kind of location. We can go ahead and get the command that we need in order to get the nrux setup started. So like I said, since I'm in a Mac, I need to do the // and then the nrux command in order to work. So once I do this, I start getting a session status that expires in a certain kind of time, what version it's using, under what region it's under, what's the web interface itself, and then also the forwarding. Okay, so this is the endpoint basically that we're going to be using in order to notify the HTTP localhost 3000, which is going to be the local address that we're going to be using when running the setup itself. Okay. So once we do that, we head over to Node.js, and this is when we need to get started with the project itself. So we're going to be using, like I said, Visual Studio Code, and then we're going to go to menu, file, and then open the Mac OS or open folder for Windows in order to create a new folder. So we can go ahead and do that. So we're going to do new window. We're going to do a new terminal. And I'm going to navigate to my development folder. We have one boot camp for April, yeah. And then we're gonna navigate to live demo. I have here the one that we were doing yesterday, which is the LearnForge .view model. So now we're gonna make a new folder and we're gonna call it Forge sample. cd into Forge sample. Okay, so now that we're here, we can open this folder, go into Forge sample. Okay. So as you see, Forge sample itself, it's empty right now. So we're gonna need to start adding some stuff in this part. And if you see the initiation of our Node project itself, we will get started with npm init in order to create our new package JSON that's gonna give us a definition of what the app is, what's the description, what kind of file are we going to be using as an entry point. And as a default, npm init suggests to use index.js as the entry point. For this tutorial, we're going to be using start.js just to kind of like keep a similar structure to all the other tutorials that we have. So let me minimize this and make this one bigger. So we're gonna get started with that. So we're gonna do npm init, and then package name is gonna be called for sample. Yes. Version 1.0.0. Yes. Description DA tutorial. Entry point. This is where we need to change start.js. Test command, we can leave it empty. Git repo, we don't have one right now, so we can leave it empty. And then keywords, we call it Forge. Author, Jaime. License, it can be ISC or MAT, doesn't matter. So now it kind of gives us a preview of how our package JSON is gonna look. If everything looks correctly, and I think the only thing that we need to make sure that it's set up like that, it's going to be the main entry point, which is the start.js. And then other than that, I think it should be good to go. We do yes. And now we have a new package JSON, okay? So now that we have a new package JSON, we can start adding our node modules into it. One thing that we can do in regards to this, instead of running every single command, every single like individually, we can just we give you a preview of how your package JSON actually should look like. So I'm gonna cheat a bit here. I'm just gonna copy this. Do comma, paste this. So now we have all the dependencies that we need. So once we save that, instead of doing npm install body parser -- save, npm install cookie session -- save, and for that, for every single one of them, since we already added it to the dependencies of the package JSON, we can just do npm install. So this will actually read the package JSON. It will go into all the dependencies that we have, and it will start installing all the different node modules that we need for that. So now we have all the different node modules. And I think, let me check my slides because I don't remember if I have to go further than that. I think I'm already starting to go a little bit further. So let me ask you this. I think everybody in the call already has a Forge account, already has a Forge app with client ID and client secret. It already has development and runtime editor set up, in this case, Visual Studio Code. And the only thing that we need to download, set up, it's going to be nrun. If you do not have all 4 of this, can you raise a hand? I know Daniel is having problems with nrock, but it's anyone else? Okay, so nobody else other than Daniel. And now the other question was gonna be, do you guys want me to continue with the session 2? Do you have any questions? If you wanna continue, what we can do is create the npm project, which is what I'm doing right now, set up launch configuration, prepare configuration data, create the basic express server, create router for authentication endpoints, and then set up the basic UI. We actually can split this, so I can continue with this 3, or actually, yeah, this 3, and that way I can spend some time explaining some of this. And then we can get back at 10 a.m. to continue with this part, and that way we kind of continue the flow of it. But I don't know, I kind of want to give you guys a chance to also tell me, because I know these sessions tend to have quite some time in between, but if you find it useful, happy to continue doing like that. So I'm gonna open my chat window and then hear any comments from you guys. And if you want to speak as well, feel free. Okay, let's do it. Thank you, Ian. Perfect. So if nobody is against it, I'm gonna take Ian's word. Okay, awesome, Dustin. Okay, all right. So yeah, let's do it. I don't see any complaints about it, so why not? Okay, so we started already with the initialization of the npm project and installing the dependencies, so that's check. And now we're gonna go ahead and create a new launch configuration, which is gonna be the launch.json, which that one is quick too. And actually, let me get through these steps, and then we'll see how we do it. Okay, so we have npm set up. I think we're good in that regard. So now we can get back to this. We will have to create a folder structure in order to be able to add all the different files that we're gonna be using for this tutorial. So we're gonna get some public and routes folder be added to our project. So simply we can do public, and we're gonna do another one. Just make sure you click outside, because right now it's gonna come in inside of the public folder. So, and we need also routes. Okay, so now this is starting to look a little bit better. So now we have no modules, public routes, package lock, and package.json. And yep. All right, so now we're gonna have to set up our launch.json configuration, okay? So the way to access this is we're gonna go to the menu, we're gonna do a run, and then add configuration. And then select the environment window in order to get the form like pre-set up. And since we're doing the Node.js session today, we're gonna select Node.js and then copy this and replace it with what actually it's been given to us. So as you see, also the program points out to the start.js file that we created as our entry point. So we come in here and we do run add configuration. We select Node.js. We have a starting Node.js template, but we can actually replace that with the one that we have. And if you notice here, on the previous ones, we had a Forge callback URL. But this one, we're going to be using the Forge webhook URL. And in this Forge webhook URL, it's basically your nrock URL. Because like I said, design automation needs a callback in order to notify you that everything actually worked or it didn't in some way. So that's the reason we use this nrock endpoint. So let me get this one from here. Okay. Replace this. And I'm gonna need to go and get my API keys. So we did extensions bootcamp yesterday. I think I'm gonna use this one again. Your ID here. And then I'm gonna do a quick pause on the sharing screen, get my secret. Done. Okay, so now I have my launch JSON set up with the entries that we need. Okay. No particular reason. The only reason, the question is there a reason why would you want to use the HTTP versus the HTTP and rock URL? So no particular reason, because if you see both of them actually point out to the same HTTP localhost. It's just me, I guess, seeing HTTP localhost, keeping it the same. I actually have never used this one, so I don't know if it has a specific reason for it, but since I see that it forwards to the same kind of location, I don't see if there should be a problem with that. So that's something that also we can test. But let me get through this. Let me actually make sure that everything is good, and then I will switch it back to the HTTPS to see if something actually happens, and then we can investigate it a little bit further. Okay, so I'm gonna minimize this again. All right, so we have launch JSON set up, no modules, public routes. We're gonna head back here. And then basically now we need to create the content and also create the file that is gonna be called start.js. So this file is the one that is gonna be handling our Express server. So basically defining the app, the socket IO, which is going to be the way to notify us back that something it's happening, and then where the in case there is some sort of error, where actually the error is happening. So we're going to copy this, go back to here, and then we need to add this start.js file. And as we remember, this is going to be basically our entry point for the project. So once we run that launch.json, it's going to look for that start.js file. And I think we can actually try it right now. I don't think it's going to do anything, but oh yeah, actually, oh, it's because we're referencing .server and .socket.io. That's the reason it doesn't work yet, but we will create those right now. Okay, so we go back to, yeah, that's what it is. So now we need to get the server.js that basically will do some routing to the API request that comes in from design automation in this case. So as you see, we're using whenever we have in our client side mentioned to the /API. This basically will go into routes design automation in order to find the API calls that we're defining in the server side for design automation itself. Also, we'll handle the cookie session for the two-legged lifespan of that token to 1 hour. So if it goes longer for an hour, we'll probably need to just obtain a new token and then continue with that kind of session. And at the same time, also, we do a check if we're missing the force client ID and the force client secret. So there is an access to the configuration file which will create in a bit in order to check if the credentials for the client ID and the client secret do have the values that we need for that. Okay, so now we're gonna go back to create server.js. And again, defining path, we're using Express, and then cookie session, we need the configuration. We do not have this file yet, so we need to add that one, which I believe it might be the next one. Let's see. Now it's going to be sockets.io. So sockets.io basically will allow us to find out if we are actually connected to the server or not through the use of the HTTP request. So let me get this part. Okay, so again, add a new file, socket.io.js. So whenever we start running the debug console, if the connection is a valid one, we will get to see a console log of saying, oh, the client actually is connected or the client is disconnected. So depending if some sort of like piece of code itself affects the connection for the server for design automation, you get notified in the debug console whenever you're running this sample as well. And then last but not least, I think we have one more. Yeah, so we're gonna do config. So basically, we need to export the values of the credentials object that includes client ID, client secret, callback URL. We have it here because of the structure that we have with our other samples. I don't think we need it, but because we're actually not even defining it, but since we don't require it anywhere, it doesn't ask for it, but we do need this webhook URL, which is something that we are defining in the launch.json configuration. And then we set up the right scopes for the token. So the required scopes for your token to have access to bucket creation, bucket read, data creation, data write, and code all. And then if we were using the viewer, we will also have an exposure of a token on the client side that will use the viewable's read scope for that matter. Okay, so let me copy this. And then config.js. I believe now that if I run this, oh, still no. I keep forgetting that we have some requirements, and yeah. So basically, if I just do this for now, I think that's gonna let us. Yeah. So basically, since we're passing into our app the use of the file design automation that it's gonna be inside of routes, that's the reason it's still giving me a problem. If we go into server with the port of 3000 right now, it's not gonna do anything. There's nothing to be shown. We haven't actually built anything. So basically just tells you it cannot get anything. But the application, it's already running. So this is something that we will be working on soon. So basically now, let me see where we at. Set up basic UI. So we are done with this ones. And now we need to create the router for the authentication endpoints and set up the basic UI. I think we can finish this ones. So now we're gonna create a subfolder inside of the routes folder. that we're gonna call common. And inside of that, we're gonna add the auth.js file that will actually be used to request a token from Forge. And we will end up reusing this quite a lot in other parts of the tutorial itself. So as we have done in the previous days, we do a require from the Forge API Node module in order to get the authentication two-legged. We do also a setup of the configuration in order to get us back those values of the client ID, client secret that come in from the config.credentials that we created outside in the root file. And then from there, we will use the method inside of the Node module in order to authenticate the client with the two-legged, passing in the require definitions for the required parameters for this function itself. And then we will just console log that the OAuth2 client it's actually ready. So let me copy this, head back here. So as we know, inside of routes, we're going to create a new folder that is going to be called common. Now, inside of common, we're going to create a new file that is going to be called auth.js. We create auth.js. Okay. And now our project, basically it's ready at this point, and it should actually look like this. But we don't have any UI set up already. So this is something that we need to work out next. So for the basic app UI, we're going to be using the HTML and JavaScript for this. On the Node.js side of it, we know that the WebSocket implementation that we'll talk to ngrok itself goes through the socket.io file. So we choose here Node.js, and then a simple HTML page that we can graph. And then we're going to head over to public. In public, we're going to be doing index.html. Paste this. And I think because we are not doing this yet. Oh, I think if we, let me try something. Yeah, so now we start getting just this basic UI. I think my screen looks a little bit too small. There you go. So yeah, so we have this basic UI. Nothing happens yet. There is nothing works. So it's just the definition that we just did with that HTML. You can choose files and all that stuff, but other than that, like right now, nothing happens. There is no existing activities. You can enter values because these are just basically input boxes that you can do. And then in this here is where we're going to be doing the record of everything that is going on to the server. So that's the basic app UI so far. I think I'm gonna quickly what time is it? 11:56. Yeah. So I think I'm gonna stop there for now, and that way we can make sure that you guys are getting all your setup so far. So by the time that your application starts looking like this, where you have the index.html defined and so on, you have set up the routes, auth.js. This is still not having any kind of interaction right now. This is something that we're gonna start working on the second part of this when we start defining the Forge design automation file. And this is going to be kind of like an ongoing file. So it does have a lot in there. And we need to kind of like go a little bit slower with this part in order to start understanding what's going on. Okay. So with that, I'm gonna see you. So let me actually, this is what we just did. So, and I'm not following rules here, but we're gonna steal some stuff. Okay. Okay. So what do you have to do right now? So all the initial setup that we talked about, Forge app, Forge API credentials, nrock setup for your new NPM project, launch configuration, prepare configuration data on the config.js, express server with start.js, create the routes for the authentication endpoint, and set up the basic UI. And once you run it, when you have something like this, even if it doesn't work, meaning doesn't have any kind of interaction whatsoever, just the basic UI, we will get back and continue. And with that, I'm gonna switch to my other screen. 1 second. And then I will see you back at 10 a.m. Pacific time coast, which that will be in about an hour. Are you seeing my screen? I think you are, right? Oh, yeah, I think you are. Okay. So with that, I'm gonna click pause in my recording, and that way we can get back to you guys in a bit. And yep, sure thing. Let me switch to my other screen so that way I can continue with this. Okay, awesome. So welcome back. Thank you again for joining. So we did go through a couple of questions. So just to summarize that, there was a question from Ian about if there was a reason why we will want to use the HTTP or instead of the HTTPS on the nrock URL. I basically answered that I used HTTP because I just kind of want to keep it the same with the HTTP localhost 3000. I don't think there is a problem using the HTTPS. It's just a personal preference. That's the reason that I actually choose that one. But that's something that actually we can try towards the end to see if it affects the application in any way. There was another question saying, when in production, will we replace the nrock app with an actual public domain hosted on your DNS provider, something like Route 53 from AWS? The answer is yes. So nrock, we're only using it for the purpose of the local debugging. Since we need to expose our local hosts, I guess, to have communications with this outside world, we need the nrock app in order to give us back a webhook URL that we can use. And so far, this is kind of like one of the quickest way that we have found to actually develop the sample itself. Let's see, Alex had a problem with having the package JSON and packet lock JSON inside of the routes folder. So those files need to be actually at the root folder level, because when we run npm install, the node modules need to be as well at the root folder level. So just the structure itself, I will go over again in a second, so that way you guys can compare it to what you guys have. Up to now, we only have, we stopped actually at the point of doing the basic app UI. So I think that's where almost everybody is at the moment. And there was some questions about what's the Forge webhook URL value supposed to be. So that's the value of the ngrok forwarding URL that we obtain when running the app. And if you are getting an error that says cannot find the module routes design automation on your server.js file, it is expected. I was just commenting out in order to be able to display the index.html. Yeah, so I think that's where we at the moment. So any other questions that you guys may have? Same thing, right? You can send it over from the Q&A, or you can raise a hand and I can unmute your mic and then we can chat about it. If not, I can continue. And I'm gonna give it 5 seconds. All right, let's keep going then. So now session 3, this one might be a little bit of a short one as well, because basically, since we're doing everything on the Node.js side, and then we're not gonna go over the development of a plugin in order to do this, we are gonna be providing you with that plugin. So, and then also the logic into creating the app bundle. But before we kind of like move into this part, there's one step that we have to finish from the previous one, which is defining the design automation.js file in the routes folder. So we're gonna go ahead and do that. So let me stop my sharing and switch screens. Okay, where are we? Okay, so we are at this point, right? So we finished the index.html. So we have something like this. Nothing in this page works right now. So there is no definition of the app bundle. There is no access to selecting the engine that we're going to be using with the defined activity. So we need to just continue. Paste the URL for the plugin. Yes, I will give you guys that in 1 second. So I can actually show you where I'm going to go and get it. So because it's in the tutorial. All right, so we move into here. So we're gonna get started with the Forge design automation.js file. So this is actually the functionality that it's going to be used on the client side part. So where we're going to be clearing information about the account, defining the activity, creating the app bundle activity, and also basically an action when we click the start work item. So certain things that are going to be read directly from the API Forge design automation activities, accessing the engines, and accessing also the locum bundles and API bundles from the Forge design automation NPM. Then we need a function to list out all the different endpoints that we need for the application. We will be giving also an option to clear up the account. So clearing existing activities and bundles before we start. So this is useful if you believe there are wrong settings in your account. But since you guys are going to be doing this for the first time, you don't need to hit that button. But if you want to, it's fine as well. And then we're going to have a function to create the app bundle. So think about it, the app bundle activity as the plugin that you're going to be sending to the design automation server. So we define that app bundle activity directly from the UI as well. And then we have a function to create the app bundle that points out to an internal endpoint that is going to be in a file that we're going to create in a bit to access the app bundles as well. Same thing for creation of the activity, and same thing for the action of start the work item, which is going to be the last process in order to send out the information that we obtain from the forms that we're going to filling out. So when I say forms, it's probably these two input boxes, and then also the file, which is what is going to be sent to the work item. And then writing log text. I believe this happens also in the console. A setup for starting the connection to be ready, and then just giving you information about what's the download result, the download report, and also the incomplete write log that will happen in this box here. So let's go ahead and create this file. So the name of it is, on the public folder, we're going to create the JS folder. And in there, we're going to create the Forge Design Automation.js file. So again, public folder, we're going to create the JS folder. And in here, we're going to create the Forge Design Automation.js file. Okay. So everything looks like it's supposed to, every single function, start work item, write logs, connection, and so on. Okay. So now, if we run again, Forge Design Automation, I don't think it will access the, we haven't created this yet, so it shouldn't work at this moment because I did have this thing still. So routes, design automation. Yeah, this file doesn't exist yet, so that's the reason if you try to run it, it's not gonna work. So, but let's just kind of move ahead. So when it comes to the preparation of the plugin, so the design automation uses a dot bundle, just like the one in the Autodesk App Store. So meaning it will create this package content XML file and a zip that it will include the DLL and other like required files in there. So if you want to learn more about this setup of the plugins and the bundle that needs to be converted into, we have a link here for you to look into the Autodesk App Store Developer Center. So like I said, in this section, the basic plugin that we're creating, it's just gonna update the width and height parameter from a certain file and just give us back that resulting file as the output of the design automation process. So the supported file, which is this package context.xml, will be included in the creative zip file that is ready to be uploaded into design automation. There are some prerequisites here, but this is more if you're gonna be developing the plugin. For this tutorial, we're not, because we're gonna be focusing on the Node.js side of it. So I don't have, for example, .NET to go through it and then show you how to do the debugging of the plugin itself directly from there. I believe in the other session that we're having, they just go through the placement of the instructions in order to do the simple plugin as well, because they're focusing on the Visual Studio environment itself. So in order to test and debug the design automation plugins, like I said, you do need the products, but for this session, you're okay without it because we're gonna be providing you with those. So now it's time for you to pick which engine are you gonna be using, which one do you wanna get focused on. We know that we might have participants that are more interested in AutoCAD or Inventor or Revit, but basically all of them tend to be quite like the same kind of flow that we're gonna have for the tutorial. So we can go into Revit. And then if we pay attention to here, it says prepare a Revit bundle. So this step will help you create the basic Revit plugin for design automation. And this is something that you guys can use as a reference to also understand how we create this bundle that I'm going to give you through this tutorial. So basically, you go through the creation of a new project that you name update RBT param, and then just kind of like keep going with the development of Visual Studio like it is common when you're doing Revit API development. But like I said, for this tutorial, since we're focusing on the Node.js side of it, we can obtain the bundle directly from this link. So we can do download the bundle zip. This will start downloading the bundle. And now we have the update RBT param .zip. And with that, we can add a new folder into our root file. Since we're using Node.js, we're going to add a new folder that's going to be called bundles. And in there, we're going to place the zip file. We're going to keep it zip because this is what we're going to be sending into to design automation. If you extract it, you will see what's the content, where you're going to see the package context.xml, the DLL, and so on. But for the purpose of this sample and tutorial, we're going to keep it zip, and this is where we're going to be placing it. So if we go into my terminal, let me stop this. So we are at the 4th sample level, and then if we do just a check on what's inside of this project, basically it gives us the structure of what we have available here. So we can do a directory. It's going to call bundles. I think it's bundles with us. Yeah, so bundles. So now we have this bundles folder where we can bring in the project that we just obtained from the download of this location. Okay, so now I'm bringing this into here. I downloaded this one yesterday, so I just need to fix the name because or not, that's gonna mess up my. Okay, so now the file structure itself, if we go back to the project, will look like bundles, and then we have the update RBT param.zip, or if you pick the update IPT param zip for Inventor, or depending on which one you selected, this is where we're going to be placing it. Okay. So now that we have this, we can hit skip this section, and then we're going to go into the Node.js setup again, since we have that zip bundle ready to be uploaded to design automation. So now we start with the server side, where we are going to create the route for the design automation.js file that our server is actually asking us for. So before we start creating those endpoints, we need to add the utils of those classes in order to be consistent with all the different functionality from design automation in the case of what the SDK is actually using. Okay, so where we're gonna have some definitions of all the class utils that we need to set up, like the prefix for the bundle and activity, which where we assign a certain nickname. And to not be thinking about nicknames, what we are doing in the sample is that we're obtaining your client ID, and this is the nickname that we're assigning to your activity itself. From there, also, we're gonna have a couple of like functions in order to finding files, some async functionality for the authentication, and also the creation of the design automation API. And what else? So we have a setup depending of what kind of engine it's the one that we select in order to include those kind of engines. So we're gonna get to see which is the one that we want to select, since we have access to different versions of the Revit engines that are available, AutoCAD, Inventor, and so on. And the part for uploading the file, so the entire process of uploading into the server. And I think this is where we can get started with this. So let me copy this. The name of the file in the route folder, it says route, but I think it's routes if I'm not mistaken. It's designautomation.js. So we're going to create a new file here. Designautomation.js. We paste this here, then we see that it is at the level of the same folder that it's called common. And I just want to make sure that it's actually routes. Yeah, it is routes. So we have a typo here. So it's not route, it's actually routes. So now if we run this, since now this actually it's going to find what we were looking for before, we can do, say, start debugging. Oh, give me 1 second. I think I know what happened. Let me try to get a new value for this. Let me just replace it on my launch JSON. Function, but to be an object. I might be actually still missing something. So yeah, so I think I'm still missing something in the design automation part. So let me continue with this because I think one of the parts of this file is the one that we're still missing. Yeah. So before we go ahead and create that activity, we need to define what's going to be the app bundle. So like I said, the app bundle, it's a plugin that you're going to be sending up to the cloud. And we're going to be copying and pasting this at the following endpoints just after the utils class that we just defined in that design automation file. So this is where we get the router endpoints for the app bundles, the design automation engines, the design automation app bundles. There's some other ones in here, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So we copy this, and then we look for the end of the utils class. So if we don't know where that is, so we can get started from design automation, and then we're going to see that we have a class that it's called utils. We can do a click selection on this and then just see where it ends. And basically, it's at the end of that file where we're going to start adding our routers. And the reason that this error is happening, it's because it needs to do some export of that router in order to work. Okay, so if we save this, this should now start giving us better stuff. Yeah. So now we have that the server is listening on the port 3000. We did the OS2 client created with the following scopes. So it is using an internal token as we defined here on the config.js. So it is using this access. If you see, these values are the ones actually being represented here. Okay. So now we can go, we follow the end of this part and basically says, if you run the web app now and click on configure on the top right, we're going to be able to see the app bundle that we just added into that bundles folder. And at the same time, also the selection of the different engines that are available for the use of design automation. But these two buttons do not work yet, because that's the next step that we're going to do with the definition of the activity. So if we go back into here, we do localhost. Looks very similar, but now we go into configuration, and now we do start actually getting the information about the bundles. In my case, I only have one because this is the only one that I actually added into it, but I could add all the other ones, AutoCAD, Inventor, 3ds Max, and then I will have the option of selecting which kind of app bundle, and then at the same time also which kind of engine I'm going to be using. And if you see, we start getting a list of all the available engines that you can use with Design Automation. So we have some access to, let's say, the Inventor beta for 2022. We do have the Revit 2022, and then we're supporting about like 5 versions back of this. We're still missing a couple of ones with 3ds Max. I think 3ds Max, when it got added, it was just up to the version of 2020 that needed the support. But we do have a couple ones for AutoCAD as well. So once we have these buttons actually working, we're gonna be able to select our engines. So up to this point, it's where we are gonna have the next stop. So that way you guys can go through it. I'll say try to go through the we have commented out quite a couple of things in this set of instructions in order for you guys to understand a bit more about it. And if any questions come up, please feel free to reach out and let me know. So let me stop my share, switch to my presentation. Where are we? Okay. Okay, so it's your turn now to prepare the plugin. So basically, but when I say prepare, it's just obtain the app bundle, set it up in the right location, and that way, whenever you run the application, you will have that available for you to select once the buttons start working. And then also the logic for creating the app bundle itself as well. And then after that, oh, this is gonna, let me change the time because right now I'm gonna have to make you wait for a long time. What time is it? Should be 12 to, yeah, 12 to 12. That was an easy fix. So yes, okay. So now we will get back 12 p.m. Pacific time coast. That's in about an hour and a half to wrap up the session and then start doing the definition of the activity and executing the work item as well. So again, going back to, you need to prepare the plugin. If you still need the URL, I can send it to you, but like I showed, it is available to get access through the LearnForge material. So I don't think you guys need it, to be honest. So you can obtain it from there directly in the same way that I did when I was showing you. And then also creating the logic for the app bundle itself. And remember to do the design automation on the public side as well, since we need that JavaScript in order to start letting us interact and obtain the information that it's going to get populated on those dropdowns for the configuration. Okay, so I will see you guys back in about an hour and a half. Send me any questions that you may have. It is around, what time is it? I always get confused with time zones. So it is around 10:30 Pacific time coast right now. So yeah, so I'll see you at 12 p.m. and thank you again. So we're gonna pause the share, pause recording. Okay, so welcome back. I think I have everything running. Screen sharing, yes. Recording, yes. Participants, not that many as before, but I think they might be joining in a bit, probably lunchtime or something like that. Okay, but so the next thing, So any other questions that you guys may have in regards to the previous part? If not, we can continue with the definition of the activity and also the work item piece. And if you have any questions, just add them into the Q&A and I will look at them in a bit. So definition of the activity and also the execution of the work item is what it's next. So we will be looking into the code for the creation of that activity. Basically, we're defining and letting know the server what do we want to happen whenever we send the data to the server itself, and then just start executing that action with the work item in there. So we're gonna go into demo for this. So let me switch screens. Where are you guys? There we go. Okay. So I think we are up to, we did routes folder design automation.js. And then we're up to here. So like I said, the configuration of it, the buttons do not work yet. So this is something that we're gonna have to start working on right now. And basically it's giving the action to define the activity that it will come into place in this location. So it will have a name similar to what the bundle is and plus, let's say dev or something like that. Okay, so one thing that probably I'm gonna have to restart, it's my mroc. So let me bring in this. Okay, go into here. Let me just fix this really quick. Okay, so we're gonna stop this. Okay, got that. All right, so now we're gonna go into defining the activity. Okay, so again, since this tutorial itself, it's being hosted with Node.js, we're gonna be selecting Node.js. And a small definition about what an activity is. So basically it's when we specify which kind of action it's gonna be executed by the defined engine. So when we specify, let's say, how many inputs are we gonna be sending, how many outputs we're expecting to get back, and together with that app bundle, which in this case, it's gonna be the plugin using the desktop products APIs. So that's basically the definition of that activity. So like I said before, if we see what we are sending, so we are sending some JSON data that includes an object that has parameters for the width and the height. And at the same time, also, we are sending an input file. And what we are expecting back, it's a new file that was modified with the values of the width and the height that we entered in it. So basically the activity has two inputs, the file and JSON data, and one output file, okay? So let's go into Node.js. So now it says, we will write the endpoints for creating the new activity and getting those and getting existing activities that we have with our account. Which in this case, since it's the beginning for you guys to create this definition of activities, probably you're not gonna have any other ones than the ones that we create in this today. But in future reference, let's say you continue using the same set of API keys, and then you start building new functionality for the creation of these activities for design automation, you're going to start getting back a list. And that's the reason that the sample itself has this drop-down menu in order for you to select which one do you want to go ahead with. So we're going to be sending from the click of the button in the action of the UI, it points out to the Forge Design Automation activities in order to start with the creation of the new activity where we define the standard naming for the app bundle, the activity name, and we continue from there in order to do the definition of the activity itself. What are we sending? And in this case, the input file that it's being sent directly from the UI, and at the same time also the input JSON information. That in this case, it's the values that we're entering on those fields for the width and the height. And as an output, we need a file to be returned with the engine attribute.extension. So in case you're sending a Revit, you are expecting a Revit file, that this is what you're gonna get back, .rbt. And the reason that it's set up like this, it's because it can be used for any of the other engines that we have available in the tutorial as well. So as the activity itself, once it goes into a processing mode itself, and then we get a status code of 200, if the activity app bundle name, it's already defined. So when we do this part and we define the activity, basically we create it and update it, we don't need to do this every single time. If we do it once, it is set up in our account, unless we want to clean up something that maybe certain kind of activity didn't actually work like we were expecting, and it's replicated many times in our list of selection activities, and we want to just wipe out everything in that account, we can do a clearing of the account and then just get started again with a new definition for that. And then we are expecting something like this. When we define the app bundle, we define what's going to be the engine that we're going to be using. And then from there, we will define the activity. I noticed that this Giphy has a different name with the define activity. This past 2 weeks, we were doing some updates to the tutorial. So right now, it's actually saying create an update, but the action, it's basically the same. It's just a new UI change from this button. But sometimes the define activity was a little bit confusing for some people, but the fact that we have this create an update, basically we're creating the activity, or we're basically updating the activity because maybe we want to switch the engine that activity is running on, so we can also update that one. Okay, so let's go ahead and build this. So we are going to be adding this code again in our design automation.js that we can find in the routes folder. And it says to add it right before the model exports of the router. So we go into design automation.js. We have model exports here. If we notice, we start having some other router definitions here to define the app bundle, to return the list of available engines, and so on. So it basically doesn't matter where you add it, as long as you add it outside of, sorry about that, outside of the of any other defined route, it's more than okay. But we define it to add it right at this point, because in that way we can continue with kind of like a clean structure that at the top one, we're doing everything that's necessary for the app bundle. And then later on, we start moving into defining the activity. And pretty much after defining the activity, we're going to start moving into defining the functions that we need for the work item, and probably are going to go in that below part as well. So we add here the definition of all the activities. So we were up to this point. So actually, let's do this just to kind of like make sure that okay, so if we save this and now we start debugging again, we have that server client again for the token information. Our client is connected. So now we can go into here, reload. We're going to do configuration. So we're going to do the update RBT param. And let's pick Revit 2021. And then we're going to do create an update. And if you see, we have an empty field here, but we're going to start defining that up bundle and activity for Revit 2021. So now my up bundle, it's defined with the value of my client ID dot the update RBT param app bundle plus dev version 1. And the activity name, again, same thing, client ID, update RBT param, but now it's an activity plus a dev. And this is what we're actually showing here. The name of the activity itself it's basically this entire thing, but for like the UI purposes, we're adding this part here. Okay, so this doesn't work yet. So we're up to this point where we now need to start adding all the necessary code in order for us to be able to do the start work item. But before I do that, I see I have a question. Perfect. Okay, so Alice's problem, it got solved because the sample file was, actually it's a version 2019. Okay, but what engine were you selecting? I don't think I have had that problem before, unless I select, let's say, an earlier version of what that file is. Maybe if you can share it with us in the chat or on the questions as well. What kind of engine you defined before? I'll be curious about that, but I'm glad that it worked. Okay, so now we're gonna head back to this part of the definition of the activity. And now we're gonna move ahead into the execution of the work item. I think she replied. I had selected 2021, switch to 2019 and refresh. Oh, so actually it might not work for me as well because I did define 2021, but let's continue and let's find out if that's the case because I'm pretty sure I have done the 2021 stuff before, but we'll see. But thank you for letting me know. Okay, so now a bit of definition about what a work item is. So basically, it's the job that executes and specifies the activity using the specified input files, which in our case, it's the JSON file with the Revit AutoCAD Inventor 3ds Max file, doesn't matter. And we want to generate a new output file that it's gonna be, let's say, a version 2 of that original file that we sent. But now it has a new set of parameters for the width and the height. So the relationship between an activity and the work item can be thought as a function definition or a function call. So basically activity will be specified by the app bundle in which engine it's gonna be using. And the work item, it's the one that it's gonna grab everything and execute those itself. So this tutorial basically will input that URL into input the JSON data with the new parameter values to the destination URL, which in this case, it's gonna be stored in our object storage bucket. So it creates a bucket and we can see it after I'm done with this because since I'm using the same credentials from the sample that we did yesterday with the extensions and so on, if I switch projects and I load that project, probably a bucket got created through design automation and it's gonna be uploading the files in there. I'm gonna obtain the result RBT and then we can compare it one against the other. So now we're gonna continue with Node.js. And then in this part again, right before the model exports router, because this is the last slide that we needed the file in order to export everything in regards to the router. We're gonna be defining the entire part for the initiation of the work item. So again, In the design automation file that we have inside of the routes on the server piece, we're gonna start using the start of new work item where we gonna have like some kind of basic input validation itself with sending values for the height, width, parameters, the activity name, what's gonna be that work item data, and we can like debug through it. At the same time, we're using Multer since we need to upload this file into the server itself. Save file to server, uploading into OSS. We're going to be using a transient bucket. So if you remember from previous days, we have 3 different kind of policies on the bucket. So we have transient, temporary, and persistent. In this case, transient will expire anything that you upload into it within 24 hours. So if you want to switch that to later on use it, you can switch the policy yourself and then do persistent or temporary, depending on what you want. Temporary keeps it for 30 days. Persistent will keep it until you decide to delete the bucket. We're gonna continue with the preparation of the work item for sending that input file. We will be generating I believe here it's where we generate OSS bucket objects, putting the file into the bucket itself, passing in the authorization token in order to be able to add it to the OSS. Same thing for the input JSON. JSON stringifying that data, going up to the output file name. And I'm pretty sure at some point here, we're gonna see, yeah, so we are gonna create a signed resource. As you remember on the first slides when I was doing the intro, I said that you need to do some kind of like authorized URL, like a pre-signed URL in order for this to have the right permissions, because this is what you're gonna be sending with all the data to the part of work item. And I think that's it for this initial part. So let's copy this. Oh, 1 second. We're gonna stop this guy. Keep going here. Start work item. Okay, save. I don't think it's gonna work yet because we're still missing. Now, when the work item is done, we need a way to get notified that this actually gets done, right? And because we're running everything locally, that's the reason we're using the nrug forwarding URL. So that basically will send a notification and we will get notified about it through the setup of the socket.io file, that something already went through or just it's still processing or something like that. So we can add this part in order to get the callback from design automation to the work item if it's still on progress or on complete. So we get here. And then the last piece is we need to add that clear account functionality. So if you remember from here, we do configure. And we want to clean up everything, we do clear account. Okay, so we need to add that option in order to access the uses of the utils and the design automation to just clean up everything in regards to that account. In that way, we can get started fresh. So again, we're gonna add this router at the end of our file, right before the model exporter router. Okay, so at this point, I believe this will be it. Let me, before I move into this, let me try to open what we had yesterday. I believe it was this one, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I think this is the one we had yesterday. Yes, this is the one. And the reason why I want to just show you first what's happening is that we go to local. You see how now I have this bucket created that it's called design automation. You're going to have one similar. And if you remember what I said yesterday, bucket names need to be unique. Okay. So meaning that when they need to be unique, you guys are going to have a design automation bucket as well, but you're not seeing the prefix of the value of this bucket, which is basically your client ID, everything in lowercase, in order to make it a unique name. That's kind of like a good practice that AWS basically suggests whenever we want to keep some sort of quicker access to validation of bucket names and so on, so we can add that prefix at the beginning of the name itself. And if you see, I was testing out some stuff yesterday with the Revit sample, but actually, let me upload the file. We had it here, just this one. And that way we can see how that file looks, and then we can compare it to the other one. So Revit sample, start translation. It's not a big file, so it actually should not be too long until we can get to see it. So it seems like translation just started. Zero complete. Probably we're gonna see. Oh, come on. It's gonna give it a little bit more, just one more second. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, so we don't have information for this because it's basically just a wall and a window. But basically, we can play around with the values that we're going to be passing in for the new kind of like height and width of this window. So at this point, I think it's at a 5 and 10. So we can pass in something else there. And then we will get to see a result in here. If you notice, it does have like 2021 04 16, which is basically the date when it's being processed. It's adding that to the name of the output RBT file. So we will get to see that in a bit. So let me stop. This is not the one. What is it? Is it this one? Yeah. Yeah, so let me stop this one. Head back here. Save this. Start debugging. Okay. Probably we're gonna get some A client connected. Okay. We don't need to define the activity anymore. We already have it defined. So let's try something like width 25, height 15. Let's choose a file, RBT sample. Then we're gonna cross fingers and then do start work item. So now it's grabbing the Revit sample file. It's grabbing the JSON file that it's being composed by the values of the parameters of the width and the height, so 25 and 25. Once it sends it over to the server already has the defined activity, which is this update RBT param activity, that it's expecting these two inputs, right? So it's expecting the Revit file that we're sending and the values to what to modify the project itself. Once we have that, we produce the file, and then we send it back to us. And then we start going over this, right? So the work item gave us a status of success. So that's actually really good. How long was actually the time in the queue? So it gives you a time queue when the download actually started, when the instruction started, and when actually it ended. So it took about a little bit, 30, actually it took like 31 seconds to do this. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer, sometimes it takes a little bit less time. One of the main reasons is because, remember, these are cloud servers that if they are in kind of like hibernation mode, this needs to start again. So if there is a ongoing queue of things that are happening, like it might already have the necessary servers on in order to process this. So sometimes you're gonna see like really quick returns. Sometimes it might actually get a little bit longer. Not crazy times for wait, but just takes a little bit longer. We can download the result file if we want at the same time. It specifies what kind of command line actually it used, which in this case, since we defined a Revit activity, it used the Revit Core Console in order to process that bundle that we sent up. And then just which kind of activity was the one sent to this, what kind of engine ID, it's the one sent. This is the value for the Revit 2021. And then later on, like what actually goes in, right? So what's gonna be the input file? So we define this input file from here. The input JSON that basically it's sending the params.json file that got created with the values from the two forms here. If you see, it's passing in the width and the height of 15. And what's going to be our output file, which in this case, it's going to be the output file.rbt. Let's see, on complete, just through, trying to look if I see the HTTP is just trying to see if I see any mention about the ngrok, but I think I might not. Pre-send URL. Okay. So that's basically it to process the file. So now let me stop this one and move back into our dashboard one. It's not what I wanted to do. This is it. Did we? That's a deleted one of them. Or did I mess that up and I had to download it and I did not? I did download. That works for me. Okay, so let's do this. Download. Nineteen 3312. This guy. Takes a little bit more. Actually, Revit files for some reason, they just like so complex. They take a little bit longer. Like if this was like some sort of like DWF or anything like that, it's just 0 to 90. I like that. Okay. Yeah. So no pie chart in there. Because I define on such a large size on the height of the window, as you can see, it went out of this. Window. Good to see. Where are my? Yeah. So height 15, width 25, and with that we have used the sign automation in order to modify a Revit file directly without actually having Revit anywhere. As you see, I have a Mac. Don't even have parallels at this moment. I've been focusing more into development here. So yeah, that's basically it. So this is something that you can use in order to check the result of your file. Some things that you can do with design automation. Basically, I do have another sample that I will invite you to look into it if you want. It's a React application that it's using design automation for Revit as well. It's a simple kind of like tool in order to do some plotting of lines, right? So nothing too exciting at this point, but if you see, we're handling everything from a web application where we define the first 3 lines as walls, and then the continuous line for the floor. And now we use design automation to, like we did in the sample, right? So we send this as an input JSON that has sets of the coordinates for every single point that makes that line, and also every single point that makes that combination of lines to create that floor. So once we have that, basically we get it to send it to design automation. Design automation has a defined activity, so it's a different plugin. It's not the plugin that I just showed you. And I hope this thing is still working, because it just, there we go. Okay. So sometimes it just needs me to look at it in order to switch. But basically, I send all the different points to design automation, the defined activity in the server, which is called Sketchup. I think it's accessible for you guys to interact with as well. We'll generate those, we'll use those points, start generating inside of the Revit API a new model with the definition of those points for the wall and the floor. Then bring it back as an output. The sample will start uploading it to an OSS bucket. Once it uploads it to an OSS bucket, it will start translating. At the same time that we start translating, we also extract the thumbnail, which is what we're showing here, which is a preview of how that model looks. And it basically gives it back to you once the model is ready for loading. So then we click on the, don't tell me this viewer is gonna, okay. So we click on the model, and then we get the viewer brought up in order to give us the display of that model that we just created out of plotting 3 lines and a couple of following lines for the floor. We see the model browser for that. We start seeing that, again, we have access to the information of every single wall that we just created. These are not just 3D meshes. They're actually Revit elements that we just created through a web application by plotting a couple of lines, sending to design automation, and doing all this stuff in there. And then what we can do as well is, now that we have here a gallery of different kind of Revit families, we can start selecting a certain point into it to start bringing furniture into the model itself. So from here, we have extensions like we learned yesterday to reposition, I guess, these different models that are being loaded in here. If we start seeing the model browser again, we're gonna see that we do have now a multimodal loading functionality happening, because now we have model 1 being the set of walls and the floor, model 2 being the furniture desk and matching this kind of setup for the desk. Model 3 will be the bed checker, and model 4 will be the refrigerator. And then we can start adding more of those functionalities in there. And then after that, if we want to just kind of like use this as a template project, and then to get started with something, we can just come in here and start downloading that project for us to continue directly in Revit if we decide to do that. Okay. So with that, I'm gonna go back to here. I think I can do this. Oh, 1 second. I hate when Zoom does this. You cannot switch screens that easily. Okay, so with that, what's next for you to do? So basically, add the code for the creation of the activity and the creation of the work item, and follow by that. I want to ask you guys, the ones that we have left in here, who has done this already, and who has not, and who's having problems. And I think I'm gonna use the chat for that. So if you want to add in the chat up to where you are, just for me to have a better understanding of up to what point you guys are doing, this will give me a better idea of how long do I need to give you in order to look into this. And that way we can look into any issues that you may have. I know, Alice, it's all good to go. It's weird that it gave you that error, because if you saw that I defined the engine to be Revit 2021, but I used that Revit sample. I honestly don't know what was going on, but I'm gonna have sometimes just the restart does something. I have no idea what, to be honest. But let's start. Let me call by names, maybe. Hopefully you guys are there. Perfect, thank you. And if you have any other questions too, also just feel free to ask. Let's see. Ian, how's it going? Can you send me some update on the chat, so that way I know up to what point you are? All right, thank you, Srikant. Go for it, and then let me know if you have any issues along the way. And I'm still gonna wait for Ian's response, so hopefully he's there, or he has a little bit of volume on my talk. Let's try someone else. Manuel, any updates? Up to what point are you at the moment? Let's try one more. Gianni, I think I said that right. Yeah. Let's try Pedram. How's it going? And then Rodrigo. You're on run and debug. Perfect. Okay, so let me know if you bumped into any problems. Thank you for letting me know. Okay, so while I wait for some of you, let me wrap up this, and that way the video doesn't become such a long video for later. Again, any questions, please just feel free to send them over, and then we can look into it. And then last but not least, as you have gone through this week working together with us, it's been a pleasure. I hope you guys found it useful. Thank you, Gianni, for letting me know. How do you get support? So like I mentioned before, so Stack Overflow will be kind of like our desired via to go, because there is a community already of people that are using the platform that can also obtain some kind of credit when they come up with some answer for you guys in there. If it becomes a matter of like you want to send certain kind of data, it's kind of like some sort of confidential data or anything like that. You can always reach out to forge.help@autodesk.com, and then if you want to jump in a one-on-one call with either one of my teammates or myself, we have a Calendly set up for you to join. Each one of us has defined available slots of time that we have, and you get the opportunity of a one-on-one call for 30 minutes, depending on what kind of time slot you decide. And we're available around the world, so the time zone that fits the best for you will be the one that you will join. And yeah, and I think that's it. So I'm gonna say goodbye, but I'm not gonna leave, don't worry. I'm just gonna stop the recording. So thank you again for joining us during the week. Like I said, I hope you guys found it useful and helpful. And I hope to catch you guys up next time. So let me.
This Phil, yeah.
Oh no, yeah, happy to help out for sure.
Thank you. Yeah, actually, I'm a PhD student and I'm working on some FMS stuff. So I think maybe I can somehow relate this kind of all this virtual stuff with my thesis, and that's why I'm attending this training,
Awesome.
and it was very good. Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, glad to hear. So like I said, if you guys need any help in the future, just feel free to reach out. Okay?
For sure. Thank you so much.
All right.
Have a good weekend.
You too.
Bye.
Okay. I think we're good. Awesome. Well, thank you again for your time. Thanks for sticking around. I'm glad that everything went smooth and it worked fine. So if you guys have any further questions or anything like that, feel free to send us. You can send an email to forge.help@autodesk.com. Actually, let me send you guys that. So feel free to reach us out if you have any other questions that we can help you out with. And thanks again for joining. I know some of you stayed during the entire week, so I know that's some good commitment over there. But I'm glad that you guys are learning about this stuff, and can't wait to see what kind of progress do you guys make with the rest of your development. Okay. So stay safe, have a good weekend, and I will catch you up next time. All right, take care, guys.